Good morning. My name is Tony Navarra, and I'm here today with another book review. And the book today is How to Get People to Do What You Want by Gregory Hartley and Maryanne Karinich. Now, I'm going to get to the review in a moment, but let's just start with the title. I mean, that's a bold title. How to Get People to Do What You Want. And and who hasn't wanted to get people to do what you want? When you're a kid, it's like, oh, I want my parents to do what I want. And then when you're a parent, you go like, I want my kids to do what I want. And so everybody always wants to get other people to do what they want. And that's a bold title. That's a bold claim. And I think that both Gregory and Maryanne here in this book really, really nail it with that. And that's one of the reasons I like this book. It's one of the reasons I wanted to review it. And the subtitle is How to Use Body Language and Words for Maximum Effect. Because how do we communicate? We communicate with words, and we communicate with voice tone, and also with body language. These things all play into how we communicate as humans. And now, before I get into the book review solidly, I want to talk about the authors, because the co-author, Maryanne Karinich, she seems to team up with people that are subject matter experts, and then she takes their knowledge, massages it really nicely, and is able to present it in a way that people like me can understand it. So she does a really good job of taking Gregory Hartley's concepts and making them so usable. Now, Gregory Hartley, I first became aware of him probably like March, April 2020. He teamed up with 3 other body language experts to form what they call the Behavior Panel. It's a YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. They analyze videos of like police interrogation videos or media interviews, famous people or not so famous people, and dissect their body language. And I gotta tell you, the what I must be blind, because these guys they pick apart these interviews and they come up with the most amazing things. And then you go back and you watch the interview again. It's like, oh yeah, you're right, they are doing that, but that is such a subtle thing. So it's kind of fun, and body language reading is certainly a skill that I am in the process of learning more and more about as time goes on. I also had the privilege of having Greg Hartley on a project I did last year called Lights, Camera, Connection. I had a chance to interview him. He's a great guy, very generous with his time, and I always like everything he writes. Now, one of the things that Greg and Maryanne argue in this book is that humans are social creatures. And if you've listened to any of my reviews in the past, you know I'm right there. Humans are social creatures. We love belonging in groups. We need each other to survive, to thrive. Being in groups it's just important to our mental and to our social and physical health. And Maryanne and Greg argue that there's 2 main drivers for behavior in social settings, and one is belonging, one is differentiating. The phrase that I really like is one that isn't actually in the book, but the science writer Will Storr said, we humans like to get along and get ahead. And that's exactly what it is, belonging and differentiating. So we want to belong, we want to get along, we want to be part of the group. Humans seem comfortable in hierarchies, and hierarchy where some people are given higher status than others. And then once you're part of a group, there's a process of differentiating. So differentiation is how you're different from the other members of the group. It's a little tricky. You want to be a little different so you can gain more status, but not so different that you have a falling out and you're expelled from the group. Now, when it comes to being part of a group, there's a lot of different ways that group members indoctrinate each other. And it can be more difficult or less difficult to join groups. So, for example, some clubs you can just send your money in and you're a member. Others you might have to engage in a little light hazing, a roast or literal hazing when it comes to not high school, but college fraternities. And some of them require a multi-lifetime commitment. Some, not just this lifetime, but the next one and the one after that, and who knows, maybe even more after that. Not sure how they would collect on that one, but hey, why not? If you're going to go for one lifetime, might as well go for many. And the more difficult it is to join a group, the more committed each of the members are to the group and its traditions. And then there's a dynamic created where other members of the group will exert influence on each other, and they'll just keep everybody in line. I'm going to give a quick example. This one's kind of from ancient history. I don't know how many of my viewers are familiar with this, but there was a very famous singer here in the United States, from like the 50s until the 90s, Pat Boone. His core audience tended to be white, evangelical Christians. All right, easy listening. And then I don't forget if it was the late 70s or maybe the early 80s, he decided to do easy listening covers of like hard rock music, like Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne and the like. And he showed up at some award ceremony and he had all these fake tattoos all over his body and he wore, his bare chested, he had his leather vest, and oh my gosh, his fans just went nuts. Oh my gosh, Pat Boone had sold his soul to the devil, and he got into so much hot water, and finally he, mea culpa, and he went back into the fold. So that's an example of how groups exert influence on each other to keep each other in line. We see a lot of examples of that today, but I like that one from ancient history. Now, as a salesperson, how do you use this stuff, right? And I got to tell you, what I really like when I was doing sales in a retail environment, it was business, it was business to consumer, was selling to couples. Because couples, it's like a little group, right? Okay, they have their norms and their traditions. They have their own little secret language. They can look across the room and raise their eyebrows, and before you know it, it's time to GTFO, right? So it is a little group. And once you unlock that secret language, once you kind of unlock those norms and traditions, bang, all of a sudden, it becomes so much easier to sell because you're one of them. And then the group dynamic will take over. And rather than anybody question the sale, rather than anybody go back and revisit the sale, there'll be a virtuous cycle going on where the sale will be self-justified, and boom, it's locked in. The sale is solid. There's not going to be any kind of second guessing or buyer's remorse because they're now in a self-reinforcing cycle. Selling to couples, man, it's the best way to go. So I am sure we are going to have more of this book, and I keep putting this up on the wrong side, so I got to keep to remember it over here. So we're going to have more reviews of this one because there are so many great parts to this, including body language and words, and it's a tremendous book. All right, guys, you guys have a good one, and make some sales, huh?